The South African Communist Party, an ANC alliance partner, has raised reservations about the formation of a government of national unity. The GNU is made up of parties of various political ideologies, including the ANC, the DA, the IFP, as well as the PA. I am joined now by Dr. Alex Mashilo, who's the SACP spokesperson. Dr. Mashilo, good to have you on the program this afternoon. So with the ANC returning to power, but without a clear majority, how does the SACP view this new political scenario, if you will, in terms of advancing its own goals?
Look, what has happened is the outcome of the elections and how different political parties saw their way forward following the elections. But I must make it clear that our assessment, when we look at the election outcomes in terms of the result, was that there were permutations in the distribution of seats for the African National Congress after consultation with alliance partners to form a minority government with the futures of a government of national unity. And that such a government had to exclude the DA and the MKP. But we were aware that what would happen would not only be determined by what we want and what the African National Congress wants, because for the first time since 1994, the ANC fell below the 50% plus one majority required to form an outright majority government. So what was going to happen was in part going to be influenced by the attitude of the other parties during the process of engagement. But insofar as we were concerned as the SACP, there was nothing that really compelled us to move from where we stood. And when we did so, we did not stop the African National Congress from consulting with the other parties. The situation we face is quite precarious in terms of the balance of forces. It is what resulted in what we saw in Parliament, with others challenging the African National Congress and others supporting it. We have a Politburo meeting and a Central Committee meeting by the end of this month, and we will go into the details to chart the way forward. As things stand right now, this moment has reaffirmed our resolution to forge a popular left front and build a powerful socialist movement of the workers and poor as the way forward, because the configuration and balance of forces is changing. So we need to build wider unity of the working class, because that is the only weapon we have in our hands to change the balance of forces and advance the working class struggle, regardless of who is in government. Our historic mission remains that of raising the proletariat or wage laborers as a class into ruling class and moving forward. And the changing scenario in South Africa is posing different challenges to us, requiring us to look at our strategy and tactics.
So you've mentioned the importance of a strong industrial policy in your recent remarks, but also transforming the economy. How does the SACP then plan to achieve this? And what role do public ownership and state-owned enterprises then play in this strategy?
Yes, regardless of which government is the government of the day, the key challenge facing the people of South Africa is the crisis of unemployment. You can't have a 60 million population with over 11 million unemployed people. That crisis has to be resolved. And it is among the factors that contributed to the decline of the ANC. Although the ANC is not the only party that declined. The DA declined. In fact, all parliamentary parties except the IFP declined, and others declined to the point where they are no longer part of parliament. And the IFP's increase was also not significant, it was marginal. So there was this arrival of the NKP through, among others, ethnic mobilization. And this is not a new identity politics in South Africa. Parties like the Democratic Alliance have benefited from the identity politics of race. So their core constituencies and their core votes come from the white community or communities that were declared white-only communities in the past. So it was surprising when they were complaining about identity politics. So to resolve these problems of the high rate of unemployment, there is no other way forward except to enhance our industrial strategies to produce a high-impact employment creation and industrialization policy. And this requires funding from the fiscus as well as support from monetary policies, in other words, macroeconomic policy. These things are not going to happen except if we have a strong and united working class, which can hold both parliament and the executive to account and contest the policy space. Because in our country, democracy includes consultation on matters of legislation, policy, and regulation. So the working class still has space while it is pondering on a future option relating to the electoral terrain. We have to mobilize and become strong to ensure that we fight to achieve this high impact comprehensive industrial policy supported by an aligned macroeconomic policy, which I have referred to, and among others also the expansion of public employment programs to try and reduce the unemployment rate. But all this cannot rely on who is in government. They require a highly mobilized working class in the same way as we dislodged the apartheid regime. That is the best way forward.
Dr. Mashilo, we are fast running out of time, but before I let you go, fighting corruption and crime is also seen as a key focus for the SACP. What specific steps does the party advocate to really dismantle these networks and also ensure accountability in government, but also public institutions?
In 2014, if you could remember, we became the first political organization in South Africa to point to the existence of what we call corporate state capture. That time, we concluded that state law enforcement authorities, some of them were actually compromised to win the battles. And we concluded that the best way forward was to combine public mobilization with the fight to save our state law enforcement authorities from the compromised positions they found themselves in. As things stand right now, that still remains the relevant direction. It is through that direction that the SACP was able to fight for the establishment, in fact, became the first to call for the establishment of a commission of inquiry into state capture. A year later, the former public protector, Tudi Maftonzela, prescribed the commission as part of a remedial action. And we fought for the establishment of the commission and supported its work. That is an example of how a mobilized working class can make achievements. But over and above that, we need to continue working together with our allies and other South Africans who are interested in dismantling the networks of neoliberalism and corruption, because state-owned enterprises were not only collapsed by corruption, they were also collapsed by neoliberal policy prescripts. Those prescripts, among others, going back in the 1990s, following the crisis of the 1970s, curtailed state investment in state-owned enterprises, and we saw a number of state-owned enterprises deprived of adequate capital recapitalization and becoming outdated.
If you wrap up your thought as well, Dr. Mashilo, we are running out of time.
Thank you.
That's Dr. Alex Mashilo. He's the SACP spokesperson, really sharing their insights on the SACP strategic perspective.